Hey guys, this is Matt from the Skeptic Squared podcast. I'm just letting you know that you are about to listen to an episode of the show recorded before we chose the name Skeptic Squared, and our contact information is different from what you will hear during this recording. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at skepticsquaredpodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit the show's blog at www.skepticsquaredpodcast.blogspot.com. As always, if you like what you hear, please rate us and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. This is the Circle Squared podcast.
A safe place to make light of sacred things.
My name is Matt.
And I'm Corinne.
And in this program, we will be discussing current events related to religion, atheism, and skepticism. Our goal is not to insult believers,
Although that will probably happen from time to time.
but rather to share our point of view on these topics in a way which will benefit and entertain others.
Or maybe we just want to stroke our own egos. You decide.
Hello, and welcome to the Circle Squared podcast. Today is Sunday, November 29th, 2015, and with me is my fabulous wife, Corinne.
Hello. You changed.
You said I needed to change it.
No, fabulous.
I'll come up with other adjectives in the future.
Okay.
You've given me a challenge. Today we will be discussing religious indoctrination of children, including how it relates to homeschooling kids, and some of the tactics used by religions, such as music. In fact, I'm pretty excited about that segment. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a while. We'll also be discussing an article from one of Glenn Beck's lackeys, Matt Walsh, in which he argues that America is a Christian nation.
No, it's not a Christian nation.
That it's not a Christian nation?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so he's saying that it's not a Christian nation.
More or less.
Okay. I misunderstood what you were saying then. Okay, so Matt Walsh is apparently agreeing that America is not a Christian nation.
But he doesn't want it to be.
Okay. So
There's the rub.
there is the rub. The Matt Walsh rub. Anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at circlesquaredpodcast@gmail.com. You can also view the show's blog at www.circlesquaredpodcast.blogspot.com and leave a comment there. If you like what you hear, please rate us and leave a review on whatever platform you find us. And just kind of a note on that, I have been working quite a bit this week on trying to get our website and our RSS feed and everything like up and running so we can be on iTunes. And it is just one giant headache, like trying to do all that. Good grief. I like to think of myself as a fairly tech-savvy person, but this is kind of kicking my butt a little bit. I'm trying to do everything free, so that's probably the problem. We'll see how it goes. So for now, we're not on iTunes, but yeah, obviously some people are finding us. All right, so let's get into one of the articles that I have. Let me just pull it up real quick. So the article is from Huffington Post. I've seen this actually posted from various other news outlets. So this isn't the first time that I've heard of this. This particular article is from Huffington Post, and the article is called "Children Exposed to Religion Have Difficulty Distinguishing Fact from Fiction, Study Finds." So the general idea is that they had a pool of, I think, 66 children, which isn't a huge sampling.
Do you know when this was done?
When it was done? Let me see.
A new study published in the July issue.
So that would be this year. Yeah, so this is a study from the July issue of Cognitive Science.
It's just like skimming the first couple of paragraphs. This sounds really familiar.
Oh, actually, it is from last year. Okay, so from July of last year. Okay. I was thinking it was more current. Which could, I guess, explain why I've heard of this before.
Yeah.
So July of last year, 2014, from cognitive science, and they took 66 children and did a survey where they basically gave them different questions of different types of stories, some from books of scripture, like say the Noah's Ark story, or different miracles happening. Then they had stories of like, well, they don't actually give any real examples in this article, unfortunately, but things like Humpty Dumpty, or like
Just
more
fairy
like
tales.
right, fairy
typical
tales, yeah, that kind of stuff. Or they would give them stories of like factual stories, like historical stories, stories of real people that actually happened. And they would ask the children if they could identify which stories were fact, like actually happened, or if they were fantasy. And the children that were raised in a religious household or went to what they call a parochial school, which is a religious school. I had to look that word up. I've never read it before. They had a more difficult time being able to distinguish between fantasy and reality, because the way that children's minds work, like they kind of draw parallels between the stories in the religious texts with the stories in the nursery rhyme books and that kind of stuff, and they just don't see like the difference between the two, whereas children that are raised in a more secular household are raised looking at these historical, realistic stories, and then all of these other stories are lumped together as fantasy, like religious and fantasy are all kind of put together in more secular households. And so they have a better, barometer for fantasy versus reality. So that's something that the study came out with, which I thought was interesting. It's not, it's obviously not, a silver bullet, like this isn't like the worst thing that's ever happened to religious people or the worst argument against raising kids in religion. Just kind of interesting, like the way that it, the stories that people tell their children, if you tell them that, talking snakes and talking donkeys are real, then when they see a talking mouse in Cinderella, they think, oh, well, maybe that happened too. So
It's at least not out of the realm of possibilities.
right, exactly. So that's what I got for that article. Pretty short and sweet.
I think we should talk about that.
With the spare ref?
Yeah. That looks like why the study was done.
Okay, let's talk about that. So I'll just read the paragraph. It says, refuting previous hypotheses claiming that children are, quote, born believers, the authors suggest that religious teaching, especially exposure to miracle stories, leads children to a more generic receptivity toward the impossible. That is, a more wide-ranging acceptance that the impossible can happen in defiance of ordinary, casual relations.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, children are not born believers. They do have to kind of suss out what's real and what's not real. And when
It's
you
a learned behavior.
exactly, it's a process. You have to learn from experience. Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway.
sorry. I just think that was important.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, so this all kind of ties into the indoctrination of children, which is kind of the main topic that we wanted to talk about today. And so I found an article on homeschooling, in particular religious homeschooling. This is an article that I found on J.T. Eberhard's blog, What Would J.T. Do? Which is kind of clever. This is dated November 2nd, 2015. And the article is Texas Supreme Court decides if parents can deny their kids' education if they think the rapture is coming. Okay, so here's more or less the backstory. So it's actually kind of an older story. It's been going for a long time. So in the mid 2000s, I think it was in 2004, this family, the McIntyres, living in El Paso, Texas, decided that they were going to take their 9 children, out of public schools, because they wanted to home teach their kids and teach them about religion and the rapture and the second coming. And as a result, all of their like math and history studies just kind of went to the wayside. Like they didn't do it. And so in 2006, so after 2 years of this, of just getting completely just religious indoctrination, just a religious education, their oldest child, a 17-year-old girl, ran away. She decided that she didn't like the environment anymore. And what she did was she actually went to a public high school and enrolled herself. She was tired of being taught only religious stuff. She wanted to get an actual education. So, I mean, that's kind of the high point of this story. Like good for her, like way to take initiative. It sucks that she had to run away from home to do it, but I mean, obviously she's got a good head on her shoulders overall because she ran away from home to go to school. Like most of the kids that I work with, the troubled kids that I work with, run away for much more nefarious reasons. So this led into this really long series of court cases and appeals where the school district tried to sue the McIntyres for truancy, and then the McIntyres appealed and blah blah blah. Like it's been going on for years, over a decade. This has been going back and forth between the school district and this family, and the question becomes, where does religious freedom cross a line when it comes to educating your children? Do families that decide to homeschool their kids have a right to not teach their kids math and science and history and literature in order to teach them that Jesus is coming, like that the rapture is coming? Is that something that is within the realm of religious rights? So this article says that the Texas Supreme Court is going to be ruling on exactly that point, trying to come up with a decision of whether or not families have that right, like whether or not that falls into the realm of religious freedom. And it is kind of a sticky situation, like a lot of people talk about how homeschooling is by and large it's a religious right kind of trend, like most like conservatives are doing it. There are exceptions to that, obviously, and there are a lot of good resources that have come out in the last few years. Like one of my siblings has been homeschooling a couple of her kids for the last couple of years, not for religious reasons, just to kind of get them caught up to school, their school standards, because they're kind of falling behind. And she used a lot of resources that were made available by the public school system. Like they said, if you're going to do this, this is how we would like you to do it so that you can get your kids caught up. So a lot of those kind of resources are coming more popular, more well known. But I don't know. Like I feel like I'm kind of rambling now.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Where are you trying to go?
Well, I mean, I'm just kind of talking about how a lot of religious people will use this as an excuse. Not just to, like this is an extreme example, the McIntyres, but there are a lot of people who are fundamentalist Christians who take their kids out of public schools because they don't like certain parts of the curriculum. For instance, science is the big one, evolution, and sex education.
Oh yeah.
Like those seem to be the two big reasons that I've seen in a lot of these kinds of articles. Like sex education, comprehensive sex education, and evolution are reasons for religious people to take their kids out of public school so that they can only be taught, the God-approved subjects, Right. So they learn how to read, they learn how to do math, but they don't learn, the fundamentals of biology. They don't learn about contraception. They don't learn about birth control. They don't learn about, potential risks of sex, because of the religious tendencies of their parents, So, I mean, at what point does it cross the line?
Are you asking me to respond?
Kind of, yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. I know it's a big question, and I mean it's big enough to get to the state Supreme Court.
I feel like this falls under the separation of church and state. Like if it's even a homeschool, I feel like still falls under the broad umbrella of school, and school is a government institution. So I feel like even homeschool, like it should be regulated more strictly. I feel like there should be curriculums that they have to follow. And then outside of their school appointed time, you know, then they talk about things like creation and stuff. But I feel like even in a homeschool environment, they have to be taught the same things that kids in a public school are being taught.
Right. And the issue there, of course, is that a lot of these homeschool kids find when they graduate from high school, graduate in quotes, I suppose,
Right.
they try to go to a regular
college.
college or a university, and they can't get admitted because they can't pass any of the tests. Or they don't meet the requirements for anything because their parents just refuse to teach them biology or refuse to teach them this or that, you know. And that really does put the kid at a disadvantage.
Yeah, because then the only school he can get into is a religious school like Liberty University or something like that. And
Exactly.
it just perpetuates this cycle of
undereducation.
Yeah, undereducation.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it is a tricky situation, and it's kind of it's a question that a lot of atheists have been asking over the years. You know, one example that some people give as a comparison is it child abuse, or would it be considered child abuse if you taught your child that their right hand is their left hand and their left hand is their right hand, or if you taught them that the color blue is red and green is yellow, you know, like you're teaching them this misinformation.
Right.
Is that considered child abuse? And I don't know. Like, I suppose it would kind of depend
I think
on
it's like a mental abuse.
if it's done intentionally, right? Like if the parent.
How would you not do that intentionally? This is assuming the parent already knows that the right hand is the right hand.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that in that example, sure. But when we're talking about, like, you know, the undereducation of children in biology, okay, a lot of these parents don't understand the biology, and that's I think one of the things that I have. One of the problems that I have with homeschooling in general is that a lot of these parents feel like they can teach their kids better than professionals who have dedicated their lives to studying these specific subjects.
Right.
You know, and you know, in elementary school they could probably get away with it because a lot of that's, you know, basic
it's
stuff.
just broad.
Right.
Yeah.
But you get much higher than that, and it becomes an issue because the parents probably don't understand very well, and then, you know, maybe the kids will get some independent study or whatever and be okay that way. But there was another example that I was trying to think of. Another example of this is the argument that sex education should be taught in the home. Like the parents have the responsibility to do it. It shouldn't be in the school system, which is just preposterous to me.
South Park had a good episode on that. Do you remember that?
I'm trying to remember. I can't remember it right off the top of my head. But I mean, the point is, you know, these parents, the reason why it shouldn't be left solely to the parents to teach about the birds and the bees is because parents don't keep up on science. They just don't. They're not professionals in that area. And it is an
uncomfortable subject.
It is.
Which is partly, I think, from lack of education.
From lack of education, sure. But, I mean, the greater point is a lot of the parents, quite frankly, are ignorant on these subjects, so why would it be their responsibility to teach their kids about it? I mean, in a general sense, like teaching about the mechanics of intercourse or whatever, like, sure, okay, fine.
Right.
But I mean, teaching them that, you know, abstinence is the only acceptable way or the only acceptable form of birth control, for instance, that is factually wrong. There are studies that have shown that is not the case. But a lot of parents don't know that because they don't keep up on the studies, you know. So in that regard, I think it is a good thing that schools are teaching about sex education, and it shouldn't be solely on the parents.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, so I don't know. It's just kind of an argument that bugs me sometimes, especially in Utah,
right?
Where they keep trying to push for legislation to have abstinence-only education. Speaking of legislation for schools in Utah, in one of these articles on this story of the girl running away to get an education, they made a reference that Utah, just last year in 2014, removed all requirements for homeschools. Like they don't have any requirements for curriculum.
Way.
Yeah, isn't that ridiculous?
That is ridiculous.
I mean, it's just kind of absurd.
You can't call it homeschool.
Yeah, like you have to have some standards. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me. But I mean, that's just kind of the nature of Utah. It's a super conservative state. You know, it's got tons of Republicans, tons of super conservative, right wing. You know, I would call them nut jobs. They would probably disagree.
Not probably. They would definitely disagree. You're a left wing nut job.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are my two articles on kind of tying into religious indoctrination, how it can affect children growing up in that kind of environment. Anyway, so let's go into your thing on Matt Walsh.
Let's take a break from indoctrination for a moment.
Yes.
Let's see. So Matt Walsh is what Matt said, part of Glenn Beck's The Blaze.
His network of
network,
just,
whatever it's
just
called.
Crazy conservatives.
Yeah. And I randomly came across Matt Walsh on Facebook. Just a Facebook friend of mine liked one of the articles, and so I decided to read it and was appalled by what I read. And so I have this like sick fascination with Matt Walsh.
It's like a train wreck.
It's
that
like
you
a
can't turn away from.
Yeah. Yeah. I overdosed a little bit on him, and took a break for a while, but have rediscovered him recently. So this article he wrote on November 25th, and it's called "Dear Christians, Now is the Time for Intolerance."
That's such a happy opening.
Yeah. So basically, Matt Walsh just wants Christians to be more intolerant than they already are, although he thinks that they're too tolerant, and that's why he wrote this article,
I don't know.
I guess.
Christians seem to be fairly intolerant by and large.
Right. I think the biggest problem is that Christians are all grouped together. He thinks that all Christians need to be evangelical Christians like he is, not progressive. And most of this is actually against like progressive Christians. He never brings in like atheism or anything like that, which is kind of surprising. His opening line is, "Christians say we are a Christian nation, but I see no evidence to support that claim. If we are, why is our entertainment and our pop culture often so gleefully sacrilegious and anti-Christian?" So I think he wrote this after ABC released an episode on Scandal about, and they have a scene where a lady is getting an abortion, and it's set to
the TV show Scandal.
Yeah, the TV show Scandal, set to Silent Night or whatever in the background. I think that's more or less what inspired this. Now I don't watch Scandal. I watched a brief clip of that scene or whatever just to kind of familiarize myself with it, but yeah, I don't really watch TV. So I'm not schooled on that at all.
But I mean, people are offended by this because they're associating one of their favorite Christmas hymns, Silent Night,
About the birth of Christ
with
killing
abortion.
a child.
Right. Which a lot of Christians are offended by just anyways. You know, they don't like abortion. They think it's offensive.
Yeah. He also mentions quite a few other TV shows that I'll go into a little bit as well. But basically, Walsh paints progressives, and I'm pretty sure he's just talking about progressive Christians, as being violent and willing to go to any lengths to destroy Christian ideology.
Wait, the progressives are violent?
Yeah.
Okay.
He only says progressives. He could be linking, like secularists, humanists, atheists, all of those into one group, but he only ever says progressives.
Okay.
So yeah. And he thinks that, they'll destroy the lives of those who advocate against their own progressive ideals. And then he paints Christians as being tolerant to a fault and passive and peaceful.
Right.
Which, I mean, neither party is either one of those things completely. There's a mix of both. Exactly. He's a very black and white person, and he sees it in opposites.
Which is kind of the way that I've noticed this to be the case with a lot of fundamentalists in general, of any stripe, not just Christians. Like Muslims, there are fundamentalist Hindus. Like when they get at that level of their belief system, everything is black and white. It's almost a requirement, it seems.
Right. Let's see. So I wanted to read this.
Okay.
So he says, if you blaspheme their gods, and he's talking about progressives, if you blaspheme their gods or deny their dogmas or commit any sort of heresy against what they hold sacred, they will punish you. They will boycott you. They will rally against you. They will scream and shout and hang labels like bigot and homophobe and transphobe around your neck. Now, these aren't necessarily like violent things, but
Right.
it's the way he phrases them, and then later on, he's, he gets a little violent.
So he's complaining about the social consequences of him making an intolerant statement.
Exactly. And he's saying, we're not bigots, we're not homophobes, we're not transphobes, but they're going to tell us we are, but
Right.
they are. And then, he says they will destroy your reputation if necessary, and your career, and your entire life if they can. They do not believe that non-progressive ideas have a fundamental right to exist, nor do they think any form of non-progressive expression should be excused. I mean, this entire paragraph is just not true.
It's not true because because no progressive thinks. Well, I shouldn't say no, but from what I've seen, the argument is not that people like Matt Walsh don't have the right to make the hateful statements that they make. It's that they can't make those statements without consequence.
Exactly.
There are consequences.
And I think he's upset because he doesn't see their side as receiving any consequences for saying things like you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, and he thinks that they should have consequences.
Right.
It's
But there is consequences because every time that, like for instance, we keep going back to the picture that I put on Facebook, like several people made the accusation that I was calling them a bigot, even though I never actually used that word.
Right.
It's like, it creates this ripple effect, this strife with relationships between people on both sides, because of this black and white sort of thinking.
Let's see. And then the last paragraph in this, I skipped a little bit. It says, in that way, they, the progressives, are strikingly similar to jihadists, which might partly explain why progressives seem to understand and sympathize with that group.
What?
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. They're not any
I don't sympathize with jihadists.
Exactly.
I put them in the same category as Christian fundamentalists.
Exactly.
Just more violent.
Yeah. Walsh has this he has this habit of switching the places. Like this is an evangelical Christians, like fundamental Christians are closer to being jihadists than like liberals or progressives, people that are willing to change their ideals, I don't know. It's just, he does this all the time. And everything that I read, it's like he just superimposes the two.
Yeah, he's just a bait and switch.
Yeah. Okay, so he gets into the Christians. He says, now compare them to Christians in this country. Contrast how we react to blasphemy to how they do. There's certainly quite a bit more of the anti-Christian type to go around, and it's always significantly more vicious, targeted, and intentional. And then he goes into the scandal bit.
The way that progressives react to blasphemy?
Yeah. Yeah, he also has this really bad habit of using like religious words when talking about non-religious things. Like when talking about atheists or things that don't necessarily have anything to do with religion. Like he uses blasphemy there, and then he used dogma, and like he uses apostasy and stuff when talking about like progressives that like people that leave like their own ideology or whatever, like a progressive that is no longer progressive or whatever,
Okay.
I don't know. It's just, he does it a lot. He uses religious terms to define everything. Everything is religious.
So in his mind, using the word blasphemy with regards to progressives is somebody who speaks out against progressive ideals.
Exactly. So he would be a blasphemer.
Okay. And the reaction is the same, or is more severe, he's saying, from progressives hearing blasphemy in that context than, say, an evangelical Christian responding to the blasphemy of, say, the Satanic Temple putting up a Baphomet statue next to the Ten Commandments.
Pretty much.
That is absurd.
Yeah. One of the things that drives me nuts about Walsh, too, is just some of the phrases that he says. Or that he writes. So in this one in particular, he says, I'd rather stick my face in a blender. And that is in regard to another show that's on ABC Family that's called The Fosters, that is apparently about a biracial lesbian couple that fosters children.
Okay.
So.
And he has a problem with that.
He has a problem with that because, 1, probably they're biracial. 2, they're lesbian. 3, they have foster children. And he has a problem with that, and he says, I've never watched it because I'd rather stick my face in a blender. But you can tell just from the description that it was basically designed for no other reason than to flip the middle finger at Christians. That's literally the only reason it exists.
That's literally the...
Yeah, he makes ridiculous statements like that all the time. Like, this is the only reason that something like this could exist. It couldn't be just to, you know, like, show the other side of, you know...
Right, it couldn't be, like, representing a particular demographic of the population.
Yeah.
Like, say, I don't know, biracial lesbians.
Right. It's trying to normalize something that has been, you know, thought to be a terrible thing in the past. It's just, I don't know. He makes statements, bold statements like that all the time.
You know what this reminds me of? In the late 90s, I think it was. So, like, when I was in high school, I remember my bishop getting up and standing in front of the congregation and going off on Ellen DeGeneres and the show Will and Grace, and talking about how that was going to lead to, you know, gay marriage and all of these, you know, detrimental things in society and all this kind of stuff. And in a sense, he was right.
Right.
It did lead to those sorts of things. It kind of paved the way for other shows like, you know, Modern Family, or I'm struggling to come up with other examples off the top of my head. But I mean, you know, homosexuality has become much more normalized. The younger generations are much more accepting of gay rights in general. So in that sense, he's right. It's ridiculous, though, because he thinks that's a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I see the same kind of thing with Matt Walsh, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so he lists off a bunch of TV shows that are... Some of them are already out, and a couple of them are coming out soon. So he mentions one called Good Christian Bitches. This one I don't think is on anymore. It was on ABC. I didn't look it up at all. He talks about that one a little bit. And then he talks about The Fosters, which has the biracial lesbian couple. And then I guess recently it was also... it earned the distinction of being the first show to depict a pair of 13-year-old boys kissing. Okay. Which he has a problem with. He says showing young boys kiss on camera should be a crime punishable by several years in prison.
Why?
Because he doesn't like it. He's homophobic. He doesn't... this is, like, I mean, you already said, you know, we've already said this. It's normalizing homosexuality. They're trying to show people that it's not an inherently bad thing for people to love people of the same sex. You know?
Well, with him saying that it should be punishable by several years in prison, that to me that makes it sound like he's not just saying that it's bad because it's homosexual, but because it's like child porn kind of thing. You know, like
that's true.
You know, but that doesn't make any sense when you look at, like, you know, the movie My Girl, or any number of, you know, these PG Disney movies where, you know, the 14-year-old boy gets his first kiss, or vice versa. You know, it's like it's always a boy and a girl, and they're always teenagers. Like, that kind of thing happens in TV and in movies all the time. The fact that he's upset about that, I mean, it's just kind of absurd. Right. Like, why on earth would that result in a prison sentence of several years?
I don't know.
That is absurd.
And who are you sending to prison?
Yeah.
Okay, he also mentions Glee because there's a gay character on that.
That's another good example that I should have said.
Yeah, but I mentioned it, so...
Yeah, so
and I guess,
you get that point.
I guess in that, in an episode a while back, 2 gay kids lose their virginity. Which falls in line with the Fosters and the 2 boys kissing.
Right.
And then I guess in the next few months, there will be a new comedy series on Fox called Lucifer, which centers around the exploits of the biblical devil, a charming, decent, witty, good-looking, well-intentioned guy who comes to Earth in human form and helps the Los Angeles Police Department solve crimes. That is his description. I didn't look that one up either. Which doesn't sound all that bad, right? You know?
It sounds interesting, kind of.
Yeah, he's helping the LA Police Department solve crimes. Right. The devil.
So this is like, what is that show? The Medium or something like that? Or the psychic that solves crimes or whatever. Maybe. Psychic crime detective.
I don't know. It doesn't say he has any supernatural powers or anything. But yeah, I'm assuming his name is something like Lucifer. And then there's another show that will be on AMC called Preacher. And this one is based on a comic book read by immature...
This
is his description.
Okay.
Based on a comic book read by immature, semi-literate men, the show will follow the adventures of a Christian minister who's been possessed by the love child of an angel and a demon. The protagonist now roams the countryside, killing people, battling the evil church, and hunting for God, who has cowardly abandoned the world and must be held accountable by a half-demonic hellspawn. Which sounds kind of interesting.
It sounds like Hellboy.
Oh, maybe. I don't know anything about Hellboy, but...
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to go over those descriptions and those because... and the shows themselves, because then he goes on to say he wants you to imagine what would happen if, like, the opposite of these TV shows was released.
So, like, the Christian version in reverse.
Kind of.
Okay.
He doesn't like that Christianity is being targeted. He thinks, you know, while he says that America isn't a Christian nation, he believes that America should be a Christian nation. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then Christianity shouldn't be made fun of. It shouldn't, you know, it shouldn't be...
It should be held in deference, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so he thinks that, like, he's, like, wondering why other religions aren't being made fun of or, you know, things like that. So I'm just going to read this because only he can say this in a Matt Walsh way. So he says, now imagine ABC released a show called Good Muslim Bitches, or AMC made one about a demon-infested imam whose main antagonists are Orthodox Muslims. Imagine the central plot is the imam's quest to find Allah and bring him to justice for his dereliction of duties. Imagine Fox made a program called Iblis, the name of the Satan figure in Islam, where the Muslim devil is portrayed as a funny, smooth-talking Arabic dude who comes to Earth, has sex with Muslim women, and fights bad guys. Imagine, in an analogous situation for progressives, that an ABC show aired a spectacular finale episode where the uplifting climactic moment is a gay man undergoing gay conversion therapy. Or perhaps, even more comparable, imagine an exhilarating, cheerful scene where the protagonist murders a homosexual while Same Love plays in the background.
Oh my gosh.
I have a little more that I want to read first before we talk about any of this.
Go ahead.
Just imagine that a giant mainstream media company curb-stomped Muslims or progressives and then spit in their face and defecated on their idols just for fun. Imagine what would happen. I just can't believe that he writes stuff like this.
It's tying into that argument that you know, the Christians are the ones they're the only ones that are being targeted. Mm-hmm. And nobody ever goes after Muslims and blah, blah, blah. There's two responses to that I think are relevant. Mm-hmm. One is Muslims will kill you. That is reason enough not to make fun of them. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem that should be addressed. Mm. You know, we've had several examples in the last several years of, like, Danish cartoonists being killed. You had the satirical magazine in France, Charlie Hebdo. Mm-hmm. There was the attacks in Paris just a couple weeks ago. You know, you make fun of things that they hold sacred, and some members of their group will target you. Mm-hmm. Even if you just do something like, say, what Salman Rushdie did and write a book of fiction based on the Quran, the satanic verses. You know, he still to this day, like 30 years later, has a fatwa on his head, and there are people that are actively trying to kill him, and they have killed members of his staff, like some of the translators, for instance. The other argument is that this is a predominantly Christian nation.
That's what I was going to say.
And Muslims just aren't that big of a population here. Mm-mm. They don't hold the same kind of clout in you know, the mainstream culture or pop culture, and so they don't make themselves this big target in American society. They just don't. Right. You know.
So my issues are kind of along the same lines. So while America isn't a Christian nation, it is culturally Christian.
Yes.
It is what everyone has experience with, whether they grew up in a religion or not. They have some sort of experience with Christianity. It's what people know. And people find things that they know hilarious. That's why, you know, I mean, the entertainment industry, especially like mainstream Hollywood, they cater to the consumer. Yeah. They produce things that are going to get a good reaction from the people that watch it and make money off of it. And that's why, like, I think, like, ABC, AMC, all those entertainment channels will produce things like this. I mean, a lot of them might hold these ideals as well and like actually believe in them, but they're doing it because they're going to get a reaction. Even if it's a controversial reaction. A controversial reaction is just as good to them as everyone loving something because it still gets the word out there.
Well,
people
controversial
like
is
Matt
even
Walsh,
better sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Because even people like Matt Walsh that disagree with it, give them free advertising for talking about it.
Yep.
For trying to slander it, for trying to say that it's, you know, it goes against all the good things in the world or whatever. You know, it's just
Right.
He's playing into their hands, which is funny.
Right. It's like the argument, you know, you have a kid that's at school and he complains about being bullied by a particular person, and every time he gets bullied or called names, he reacts a particular way, and that's what's driving the bully to do it.
Exactly.
You know, but okay, so here's a counterpoint, or maybe something just to think about. Believers have no problem making fun of themselves. Look at just Mormon culture.
Right.
You have John By the Way, who in the 90s made lots of money selling tapes of him writing parody songs of Mormon culture. He still, to this day, does firesides, and he teaches at BYU and does stuff there. You have the TV show, or not the TV show, the movie, Singles Ward.
Yeah, the RM.
The RM. These are all parodies of Mormons satirizing their own culture. Okay. Now compare that with the Broadway play, The Book of Mormon, where you have Matt and Trey from the creators of South Park making fun of Mormon culture from the outside, and all of a sudden it becomes blasphemy. It becomes too far. You know, it's like it's okay if you make fun of your own group, but if somebody else not of your group makes fun of you, that's crossing a line.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of sounds like to me. But it also sounds like Matt Walsh doesn't have much of a sense of humor, probably wouldn't appreciate even Christians making fun of Christianity.
Yeah, probably not. Not to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think, like, if Good Muslim Bitches was actually a TV show, it could only be produced by a Muslim nation. It would be funny there. It wouldn't be funny here. Even
we wouldn't
if
get it.
No, we wouldn't get it. And that's the problem. It's like, we know Christianity.
Yeah.
We don't know... We know very little about Muslims. We know very little about Hindus. We know, I mean, we even know very little about Judaism, I would say, you know, unless you're culturally Jewish. It's like,
or you live in a major city like New York.
Yeah, like New York,
that
where
has
you're
a high
exposed to that
population
culture.
of it. Yeah. I was actually just thinking about that right before you said that list. There was a TV show on Comedy Central that came out a few years ago. I can't remember when it was. It was within the last like 10, 15 years, something like that, called The Hebrew Hammer. Okay, it's just a ridiculous show about this Hebrew guy, this Jew, running around solving crimes or something along those lines. And I remember when it came out, I tried to watch it, and there were a few funny moments, but most of the stuff that I was able to laugh at were either not related to Judaism or based on Jewish stereotypes. All of the more subtle things, like about Jewish culture and stuff, I didn't get. Like, it just went right over my head. Yeah. You know, like, I tried to enjoy it, but it just wasn't, I didn't get it. You know? I don't know, maybe I should try it again, but it didn't seem like it did very well overall.
Right. Well, I feel like even, like, when we just went and saw last night, The Night Before, like, there are subtle Jewish things, like, interlaced in that, because Seth Rogen is Jewish or whatever. But, like, they still... Everything that they make fun of is still a stereotype that mainstream Christians are going to understand. Yeah. Same thing with, like, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. How many of your average Americans are going to know anything about Greek culture?
Two.
Yeah, exactly.
There are two people.
It's like, and even movies like that just feed into the stereotype. You know, you have to do the stereotype because that's all, like...
That's what people understand.
People understand. Yeah. You don't understand the subtleties, and something like Good Muslim Bitches isn't going to be funny. Something like Iblis is not going to be funny to people that are enmeshed in Christianity.
Yeah, they're not going to get it.
Yeah, it would have to be done by that culture.
Which is kind of ironic, because if they did that in a Muslim country, they would die.
Exactly.
So there's that.
Yeah. He just doesn't get it, or is willfully ignoring these very obvious.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about people of the Matt Walsh camp or ilk. Like, a lot of times they come across as being willfully ignorant, or the more insidious version of that is that they are charlatans. They're capitalizing on the reactions of other people. which is something that I've heard a lot of people say about Glenn Beck, or Bill O'Reilly, or people of the Fox News network, that they're pandering to a certain demographic that's very reactionary, very passionate about certain things, and they're capitalizing on that and just making money off of them, which may be the case for some of them. I don't think that that's necessarily the case of Glenn Beck, which I mean is a separate subject. But Matt Walsh, he's like this young hipster version of a right-wing crazy person, and he has that look like he should be writing for the Huffington Post. Like, part of me just wonders, especially when he writes this sensationalized drivel.
Yeah. Just imagine.
Right. Like, it just sounds like he's making it up and he doesn't actually believe this. He's selling clicks to the Blaze network. Like, that's what he's doing. He's getting people to click on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just how it sounds to me.
Right. So this next bit kind of links into the, progressives are a little more violent than Christians or whatever. He, after he goes through this, just imagine what would happen, if we created good Muslim bitches, yada, yada, yada. He says that, to start with, Fox and AMC headquarters would be blown to pieces or invaded by armed assailants. ABC, for waging such a brutal assault on gay rights ideology, would be boycotted by millions, its executives subjected to harassment and death threats, its advertisers targeted, its CEO exposed in front of the world and all of his deepest, darkest secrets revealed. Dozens would be fired. ABC would be forced to issue several groveling apologies, and every ABC-owned property and affiliate and associate would have to publicly condemn the network and sign contracts promising to air pro-gay propaganda videos 3 times a week in perpetuity as restitution. And that would just be the beginning. So that's if these ABC, Fox, AMC, produced shows like Apeless and Good Muslim Bitches. Progressives would go, Rambo on them or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he says, but what happens when Christianity is desecrated? Christians slandered, Christ mocked, the devil sexualized and glorified, and unholy abominations like abortion promoted on primetime television. Well, petitions.
Oh yeah, like what is it? The Million Moms against whatever. I can't remember what it is. The Million Moms something about. I think it was anti-gay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he thinks.
Or
that...
the Chick-fil-A Day, where they had like, everybody was going to Chick-fil-A to support them like 2 years ago or whatever that was. Like they do it in reverse too.
Yeah.
That's part of the culture war.
Okay, so I guess I don't know if this is his main point, but he wants Christians to stop supporting networks like ABC, Fox, people that show shows like this. Even if Christians aren't the ones watching them, you're still supporting the networks. You're enabling them or whatever.
So he wants Christians to do the thing that progressives are doing, the very thing that he doesn't like that they're doing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, let me see, where am I at? Okay, so this is what he thinks should happen. Here's what should happen. Every Christian, myself included, should perform an inventory of the media, music, and entertainment they support, fund, and consume. Anything that is offensive to God, who created us to glorify him, should be abandoned immediately. Any network that glamorizes evil, sells debauchery, and degrades the Lord God should be permanently boycotted by every Christian in the country.
Can we have a Christian music bonfire?
Yeah. So he just wants Christians to cut everything out of their lives, basically.
Right.
Because even I haven't done any research into this, but I'm willing to bet that ABC has their hands in a lot more than just entertainment.
Probably.
And I don't know. It's just, you can't cut all that out. I just think it's funny that he wants them to do that. And he's saying that he should do that, but he's not going to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. He makes another statement. He says, in no other society in the world is the supposed predominant religion constantly mocked and belittled on their TV screens and in their schools and everywhere else. And for one, in most of the countries, like what he's referring to, I guess would probably be Muslim countries and stuff. It's like, of course they don't, because they would be killed.
Right.
And that's not something that Americans are going to do. They're not going to kill someone for stating their opinion because we have the First Amendment.
Right.
Which he even says he likes. as long as he says,
supports
I
him.
quite like the First Amendment, and I do believe everyone should have the legal, which is in italics, right
Uh-huh.
to say what they want, which I think is him
They just shouldn't
referring to these networks as maybe being on the illegal side of things by showing things like this. I don't know. But also, like, a lot of countries in the world, especially Western Europe, are highly secular. Like, they just don't have a predominant religion. They don't have that to make fun of. They make fun of other things that are culturally relevant to them, but religion is not culturally relevant to them.
Right.
Like, the Brits make fun of the monarchy all the time.
Yeah.
That's basically a religion to them. I just think it's funny that he think like religion, because he is so religious, because a lot of people in the U.S. think that America is a Christian nation, that every nation in the world is some kind of religious nation. And that's just not the case.
It's not.
It's not even close to being the case.
Yeah.
I guess that's basically all I have to say. I mean, there's a lot I could talk about, but that's the gist of it.
Well, I mean, Matt Walsh seems to set himself up for some pretty good commentary.
Yeah, seriously. Just go and read some of his articles. They're infuriating and laugh out loud worthy at the same time.
Yeah, it's the train wreck.
Yeah, it is a train wreck. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for putting yourself through that, so that we could enjoy from a distance.
I'll do it again.
So moving on, we're going to be talking about music, which is one of the things that a lot of religions use for childhood indoctrination. So kind of going back to that again. In the Mormon Church, they have primary songs for little kids that they sing from like the age of 2 to 12. Something
they don't
along those
really
lines.
sing them in nursery. It starts in sunbeams.
What's that, like 4?
So from the age of about 3.5.
Okay.
To 12.
So these are like the most formative years. Like I was going through some of these songs the other day, and like I remember singing these songs. I remember the lyrics to a lot of them, and I haven't sang these in years.
But the tunes just never leave you.
They don't. They're incredibly catchy. So for this podcast, not just this podcast, but like our Circle Squared podcast, one of the ideas that I had for like producing the show was to use the primary songs as kind of the theme music for the podcast. So the introduction theme is my version of a song, and then I've been kind of alternating through different versions of different primary songs for like the end credits. And I thought that it would be appropriate, given that we're talking about childhood indoctrination, to kind of talk about the music and the stylistic choices that I made for my versions of these songs, and just kind of go through the lyrics a little bit and talk about the impact or what it is that they're trying to teach these children. So let's kind of go through. We're going to go through about a dozen songs or so. The first one is called A Child's Prayer. This is in the Mormon Children's Songbook. It's the song number 12. And I just kind of wrote a little synopsis, or kind of my take on what it is. So let's kind of read it. This is the perfect example of childhood indoctrination. This duet starts with a child asking if God is real and answers prayers. The second part is a response from the child's parent, not God, reassuring the child that God is real and that everything they learn in church is true. Again, the answer to the child's prayer comes from the child's parent, not God.
Oh my gosh, I never thought about that.
Isn't it just kind of blow you away?
Huh.
Yeah. And this, of course, reflects the fact that most people follow the religion of their parents, because parents spoon feed their religious views to their children at the exclusion of opposing ideas. That is the essence of indoctrination. It's teaching them one thing at the exclusion of opposing ideas.
I have a question.
Okay.
Did you listen to this on the LDS website? Or have you listened to this song recently?
Like their version of it?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Okay, I was just going to ask, because my experience of this song
Uh-huh.
and the recordings that I've heard It's usually like if it's primary children singing.
Uh-huh.
If it's primary children singing, they split them up. Usually girls sing one part and boys sing the other part. And the girls always sing the child's part. The boys always sing the parents' answer part, which could be another interesting layer to add to it because
the priesthood and all that,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But just throwing that out there. Recently, like in my experience, like teaching primary and stuff, they usually just do it half and half. You know, they split the room up half and half now. But a lot of the early recordings, if the parent is not actually used, it's split up girls and boys.
Interesting. So for my version, I used synthesized drums and an upbeat lead to give the song the feeling that a child is playing a cheap Casio keyboard with pre-made music settings, much like their inherited worldview. So now let's read through the lyrics real quick, and then we will play the song for you, my version of the song for you. So, A Child's Prayer, verse 1, which is usually sung by a child, and then the second verse, which is in response to the first verse, is sung traditionally by an adult. The first verse goes, Heavenly Father, are you really there? And do you hear and answer every child's prayer? Some say that heaven is far away, but I feel it close around me as I pray. So, playing into the idea that your feelings are indicative of truth, that you feel that heaven is close to you. Heavenly Father, I remember now something that Jesus told disciples long ago. Suffer the children to come to me. Father, in prayer, I'm coming now to thee. So, yeah, you can see how a believer would totally like, the imagery of a child singing this and like thinking and feeling these things.
It's a very sweet song. I love this song.
Oh yeah, it's very well done.
Yeah, it moves a lot of people too, just the way it's sung, because children play on the heartstrings of all.
Yes. And so verse 2, this is sung by the parent. Pray, he is there. Speak, he is listening. You are his child. His love now surrounds you. He hears your prayer. He loves the children. Of such is the kingdom of heaven. And again, this is in response to a child's prayer coming from the parent, but not God. So, any last thoughts?
No, I mean, I do see that, but I also think it could be interpreted as the parent is watching their child pray, and it's just like an encouragement.
Yeah.
And it's not really an answer.
Oh, yeah, I suppose.
But
again, that ties
there is
in.
an obvious lack of response from a heavenly being.
Good point. But yeah, it's just all about the indoctrination. Okay, so here it is, A Child's Prayer. Okay, so the next song is Love One Another. This is in the Children's Songbook 136. And this song is based on the New Testament scripture, John 13, verses 34 through 35. The first part of these verses is very positive, to love each other. That's the general message, right? And this is, a very well-known verse. A lot of people know this verse. But Jesus sours the message, I think, by implying that the harmony and love Christians show for each other indicates that they are disciples of Jesus. Okay? That's like an added implication. So what about people who are loving and kind but don't believe in Jesus? What about Christians who believe that other less sincere Christians won't make the cut into heaven, deserve to be punished eternally in hell? The implication of these verses is that Christianity makes people behave better than they would otherwise.
I think also the question, what about people who are loving and kind but don't believe in Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of plays into the Christian perception of Christianity still being like the one true religion, and even though if like someone believes in Allah, they still actually believe in Jesus. Whether you have that knowledge or not, it kind of plays into the whole "you're born a believer" thing too. I think,
right, which is the argument from presuppositionalist apologetics.
Yeah, I think that's how a Christian might respond to that. Is that whether
Everybody
you
really does
know or believe in a Jesus, your subconscious knows that a Jesus exists, and that's why you're nice to people.
Right. Mormons would call that the light of Christ.
Yes.
I would call that a conscience, which is built upon social experience. Jiminy Cricket. Okay, so going back to my little writing thing that I wrote. My writing thing that I wrote. Yes, I just said that. Tell that to the thousands of homosexuals and doubters and pagans and Muslims and witches who have been killed throughout the last 2,000 years by true believing Christians. Does Christianity really make people behave better? Right. Tell that to the many homosexuals in the Mormon Church who have felt so hopeless by their belief system that they have killed themselves. Or to the victims of the Mountain Meadows Massacre, or the many, many ex-Mormons ostracized by their Mormon family members. Even if Christianity did make people behave better, which it doesn't prove their claims about the supernatural.
Right. I have nothing to add.
Okay. So the style of this song is simple and easy to listen to, requiring little thought, much like its warm and fuzzy message. I put about as much thought into the style of my version of the song as Jesus seems to have put into his kindergarten theology. Not much. Okay, so here are the lyrics. Do you want to read this one?
Sure. As I have loved you, love one another, this new commandment, love one another. By this shall men know ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. And that's it. This is also in the hymn book for adults, too.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll sing this occasionally in sacrament meeting. And just a random little side note, the phrase, by this shall men know, when I was a kid, I thought that was like one full word by the Shamino. Because that's the way it's sung. Like, for some reason, I couldn't discern the individual words. I thought Shalmeno was a word. I just didn't know what it meant.
That's funny.
By this Shalmeno.
By this Shalmeno.
So, yeah. It wasn't until much later that I realized that was an actual phrase.
Cool.
Not a word.
There you go. So here is my version of Love One Another. The next song is Do As I'm Doing. This is in the Children's Songbook number 276. The lyrics to this song are pretty simple, very straightforward. It goes as following. Do as I'm doing, follow, follow me. Do as I'm doing, follow, follow me. If I do it high or low, if I do it fast or slow, do as I'm doing, follow, follow me. Do as I'm doing, follow, follow me. So this very simple song is used to get younger children to participate in the class.
It's also to get wiggles out. We use this as a wiggle song.
Yes.
When the younger kids look like they're getting antsy, stand up and do a song like this.
It's interactive. The children follow the hand gestures of the teacher leading the song. It could be a mild form of indoctrination, following leaders, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But mostly it's just a fun, interactive song for little kids. Mm-hmm. My version is upbeat and simple, as a children's song should be. Here is my version of Do As I'm Doing. Okay, the next one is Follow the Prophet. This is Children's Songbook number 110. And this song is all about comparing the Old Testament stories of prophets with modern day prophets. We'll just read the first couple verses because there's like tons of them. Adam was a prophet, first one that we know. In a place called Eden, he helped things to grow. Adam served the Lord by following his ways. We are his descendants in the latter days.
Follow the prophet. Follow the
Yeah.
prophet.
Follow the prophet. He knows the way.
Follow the prophet. Don't go astray.
Yeah, that's it. So the next
you
verse.
sing the verse and then that chorus.
Right. The second verse is the prophet Enoch. Then you have Noah, Abraham, Moses, Samuel, Jonah, Daniel. And then the last verse, verse number 9, is, I think, my favorite.
And it's a fairly recent addition.
Yeah. So it goes, now we have a world where people are confused. If you don't believe it, go and watch the news. We can get direction all along our way. If we heed the prophets, follow what they say. And then the chorus, it goes, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, don't go astray. Follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, he knows the way. So just hammering that idea that you need to follow what the church leaders say. This song bolsters the prophets of the Bible and their mystical stories as literal people and events, and then compares them with the leaders of the church. This is classic indoctrination of young children to make them believe myths from the Stone Age are true. This small jazz combo style is only the chorus. I didn't do the verses. There's no real stylistic significance to my version of it. I just kind of felt like playing some jazz piano that day. So nothing really impressive. Here is Follow the Prophet. Okay, the next song is Give, Said the Little Stream, number 236 in the Children's Songbook. The first verse is Give, said the little stream, give, oh give, give, oh give, give, said the little stream as it hurried down the hill. I'm small, I know, but wherever I go, the fields grow greener still. Singing, singing all the day, give away, oh give away, singing, singing all the day, give, oh give away. Okay, so skipping down to the last verse, it says, give then as Jesus gives, give, oh give, give, oh give, give then as Jesus gives, there is something all can give. Do as the streams and blossoms do, for God and others live.
I hated that song. Hated it
Yeah.
when I was a kid. My dad loved this song. It was a song he always chose when it was his turn to do song for family home evening.
Oh,
That's why
it's
I
super
hate the
catchy.
song. I hate it. I hate it.
So this is a very upbeat and happy song, and it teaches kids to be helpful and give to others because Jesus did the same thing.
Right.
Okay,
Which is fine up until the Jesus did the same thing.
Exactly. It reinforces the idea that one should do the right thing because of the religious implication that one will be punished or rewarded based on their deeds, rather than the secular view that one should do the right thing because it's the right thing and it helps others.
Mm-hmm.
It teaches children to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, which can become problematic when the person realizes that their religion isn't true. I wanted the song to be upbeat and slightly fast to reflect the generally positive message of the song.
This is the one that opens.
Yes, this is
right?
the opening credits song, our introduction. Mm-hmm. So here is Give, Said the Little Stream. Okay, next we have the song Book of Mormon Stories, number 118 in the Children's Songbook. And this is probably the most subtly racist song that you'll find in Mormon culture.
Especially with the old hand gestures.
Yeah, with the old hand gestures that went with the song. They were very, I don't even know how to describe it.
I mean, there's only one in particular when talking about the Lamanites. With you do the two fingers behind your head to indicate feathers on like a headdress or something, like a Native American headdress.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, they changed that. They don't want you to do that anymore.
Right, because it's offensive.
It's offensive, and it might have something to do with, the DNA evidence that doesn't link Native Americans to Jews.
Right. So, yeah, the basic idea of the story is the Book of Mormon narrative, which is that Lehi and Nephi and their whole family came from Jerusalem to America and populated the American continents, and that's where the Native Americans came from. They're Jews, okay, according to the Book of Mormon. Which is a fact that has yet to be supported by any archaeological evidence, any DNA evidence, anything like that. So the first verse says, Book of Mormon stories that my teacher tells to me are about the Lamanites being one of the groups of people in the Book of Mormon. In ancient history, long ago their fathers came from far across the sea, given the land if they live righteously. Let's read a couple more. So, Lamanites met others who were seeking liberty, and the land soon welcomed all who wanted to be free. Book of Mormon stories say that we must brothers be, given the land if we live righteously. So that verse is about how Europeans came to America, found the Lamanites, the Native Americans, and the Europeans described in the Book of Mormon are Gentiles, and it gives a promise to the Gentiles that if they follow God, they will always have America. So that's what that verse is about. So it just kind of goes through lots of the different stories in the Book of Mormon.
The first two verses, the ones that he just read, are the two that all kids will know.
Right.
They'll be able to quote that without any problem.
Right. Those are the most commonly sung.
Yeah.
So you have a verse about Alma, who is a prophet in the Book of Mormon. You have Abinadi, who is a prophet that was burned alive in the Book of Mormon. You have Ammon, who chopped off a bunch of arms and did a few other crazy things in the Book of Mormon. 2,000 Sons of God, which is actually another song that we'll be getting to a little bit later, the Army of Helaman. You have Samuel the Lamanite, and then it ends with the last verse is about Jesus. It says, after Christ was crucified and died for you and me, he came forth to teach the truth to all who would be free. Hands were laid upon each child, he blessed them tenderly, and they lived in the land righteously. So that of course means that in the Book of Mormon it teaches that Jesus came to America after he was crucified and taught his, what was it, basically the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitude speech. He taught that to the Lamanites and the Nephites, the people in the Book of Mormon, and then they lived righteously for a couple of generations, and then everything went to crap again, and then everybody died. And yeah. So the general idea, of course, is that this book is teaching the Book of Mormon as historical fact, which isn't true. So the song is modeled after more traditional Native American music. It's got a very Native American kind of rhythmic beat, especially in the undertones of the drums. Although when you do this in the primary, you don't have drums. Right. This little bit of antiquated racism comes with hand gestures, which we already talked about a little bit. It's lots of fun for kids. It's very active and boisterous. I included lots of drums and distorted organs to emphasize the high energy of the song. I did not include the original melody. Yeah. So here is Book of Mormon Stories. next song is I Lived in Heaven, which is number 4 in the children's songbook. The lyrics go as follows. I lived in heaven a long time ago, it is true. I lived there and loved there with people I know, so did you. Then Heavenly Father presented a beautiful plan, all about earth and eternal salvation for man. Father said he needed someone who had enough love to give his life so we all could return there above. There was another who sought for the honor divine. Jesus said, Father, send me, and the glory be thine. Let's see. Jesus was chosen, and as the Messiah he came, conquering evil and death through his glorious name, giving us hope of a wonderful life yet to be, home in that heaven where Father is waiting for me. So this song is about the premortal existence, where God picked Jesus over Satan to be the Messiah and save humanity from God's judgment, because Jesus offered to give God all of the credit. That is literally what Mormons believe. Satan came up with a different plan and wanted to keep the glory for himself. God didn't like that, and since Jesus was going to give God all the glory, he chose Jesus's plan. Mm-hmm. So God's a little bit egotistical, I suppose.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. He has a perfect egotism. This is pretty heavy doctrine for children, but that is kind of the point of getting them while they're young, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This song was requested by Corinne. She thought it would sound cool as a creepy funeral march.
Because even the normal tune is fairly slow and like, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not that musically inclined, but it's
kind of
this
eerie.
Like eerie quality already to it, especially when little children are singing it.
Yeah, it kind of drones on a little bit.
It is just kind of a creepy song.
Yeah. So here is I Lived in Heaven. Okay, the next song is Will Bring the World His Truth. Subtitle is The Army of Helaman. This is song number 172 in the Children's Songbook. And Corinne, go ahead and read the first, or just go ahead and read the lyrics to it.
Okay. So, we have been born as Nephi of old to goodly parents who love the Lord. We have been taught and we understand that we must do as the Lord commands. And then it goes into the chorus. We are as the army of Helaman. We have been taught in our youth, and we will be the Lord's missionaries to bring the world his truth. Second verse. We have been saved for these latter days to build the kingdom in righteous ways. We hear the words our prophet declares. Let each who's worthy go forth and share. And the third verse. We know his plan and we will prepare. Increase our knowledge through study and prayer. Daily we'll learn until we are called to take the gospel to all the world. This song was one of my favorite songs as a child. This is the song, I think it was in our first episode, when I think we talked about like any spiritual experiences or whatever that we might have had.
Okay.
It was this song that I was referring to. I was like 6 or 7, and my friend and I just had like this overwhelming feeling of awesomeness, and we stood up in the middle of the chorus and just like started screaming the lyrics. Like it was awesome.
Well, that's the whole point of why they use music in the first place, because music stirs people. It brings about certain kinds of emotions,
and this song did.
And it does. And religions have become really good at using that to their advantage to, manipulate people into believing certain things or thinking that they believe certain things, recommitting to the church, that kind of stuff. So this song is based on a story from the Book of Mormon of a few thousand young Lamanite men who went to war instead of their fathers, who had taken a vow of pacifism when they converted to ancient American Christianity. None of the young men died in battle because God protected them. This is meant to inspire children to go on missions, implying that if they go on a mission for the church without any compensation for 2 years of work, then God will protect them from harm. Mormon missionaries are rarely mortally injured, which Mormons believe is because of God's protection. But I think it has more to do with the long list of prohibited dangerous activities and the general boringness of missionaries. They simply don't take the same risks as other groups their same age. Despite this, Mormon missionaries still die, including a sister missionary who recently died of an illness, and a couple missionaries kidnapped a year or so ago in Russia. Where was God then? So I changed the key of the song to a minor key and added lots of drums and rhythmic patterns to reflect how creepy the Mormon missionary program is to me. This is actually one of the songs that I worked the hardest on, and I am particularly proud of this one, how this one turned out. So here is Will Bring the World His Truth, or The Army of Helaman. All right. The next song is Jesus Wants Me for a Sunbeam. This is song number 60 in the Children's Songbook. This is another one that's meant for little kids. Sunbeams used to be a class in the Mormon primary for, what was it, 4 to 5 year olds, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3.5.
3.5 to 5. So like the little kids. The lyrics go, yeah, they're really cute ones. Get them while they're cute. The lyrics go, Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, to shine for him each day, in every way try to please him, at school, at home, at school, at play. The chorus goes, a sunbeam, and each time they say sunbeam, the kids jump out of their seats, which is just fun, of course. Jesus wants me for a sunbeam, I'll be a sunbeam for him. Verse 2, Jesus wants me to be loving and kind to all I see, showing how pleasant and happy his little one can be. So this song is especially designed to get 4-year-olds to jump out of their seats. It also teaches kids that they should always be good because they represent Jesus and he is watching them, which is a bit creepy. It's like the concept that Santa won't give you toys because he's watching you when you do bad things. A little bit more permanent, I suppose. My version of this song stays true to the infantile nature of the theology it is based upon. It is stylistically similar to a song one might hear in a sing-along tape for children. Anything to add? Okay. So here is Jesus Wants Me for a Sunbeam. Okay. So the next song is Called to Serve. But it's not called to serve. The song is called to Serve. I want it to be clear. It's clear. It is number 174 in the Children's Songbook. And I think
it's also in the hymn book.
Yeah, I think it's also in the hymn book, but I don't have that written down. So Corinne's going to read the lyrics to this one.
Called to serve him, heavenly King of glory, chosen heir to witness for his name, far and wide we tell the Father's story, far and wide his love proclaim. Onward, ever onward, as we glory in his name, onward, ever onward, as we glory in his name. Forward, pressing forward, as a triumph song we sing, God our strength will be, press forward, ever, called to serve our King. Oh, that was weird. Called to know the richness of his blessing, sons and daughters, children of a king, glad of heart, his holy name confessing, praises unto him we bring.
So this song is similar to the Army of Helaman song. This song is all about youth committing to be missionaries while pandering to the exceptionalism that they are taught as children. This is in a minor key. It's a bit eerie with an emphasis on the drums and the bass. but does not include the original chorus, mostly because it didn't fit very well musically with my version. It just kind of seemed out of place.
This is the missionary anthem.
Yes, this is a missionary anthem. So this is all about...
Don't you sing this in the MTC, like when you first entered?
Yeah, I believe so.
I've seen videos on that.
I'm pretty sure that happens.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I was in the MTC, but
Any young man that serves a mission later on in life, when this song comes on, you just look around in sacrament meeting and you can see them like refusing to look at the hymn book. They like take pride in knowing that they know every single word to this song. Seriously, it's funny to watch.
That does sound a little funny. Anyway, so here is my version of Called to Serve. All right, the next song is I Love to See the Temple, number 95 in the Children's Songbook. The first verse goes, I love to see the temple, I'm going there someday, to feel the Holy Spirit, to listen and to pray. For the temple is a house of God, a place of love and beauty. I'll prepare myself while I am young, this is my sacred duty. I love to see the temple. This is the second verse. I'll go inside someday. I'll covenant with my Father. I'll promise to obey. For the temple is a holy place where we are sealed together. As a child of God, I've learned this truth. A family is forever. So this song adds to the pressure of Mormons to conform and obey so they can go to the temple and be sealed to their family forever and ever. It's better not to disobey and be the black sheep who messes up the eternal family. There's just a ton of pressure. The song is generally viewed as positive, but to me the message is insidious as it has caused strife within my own family. When I told my mom that I had stopped going to church, one of the things that she said, through sobs and tears, was how sad she would be in heaven without her little Matthew. People literally choose to stay in the church in order to avoid having this conversation with their families. There is a tremendous amount of pressure. I chose to keep my version of the song upbeat and kind of hokey to illustrate the pressure to keep up appearances.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, so here is I Love to See the Temple. The next song is actually not a children's song. This is If You Could Hie to Kolob. This is in the hymnal, number 284. It's kind of a weird title, so let's kind of, I guess, explain what it means. Kolob is a word that comes from the Book of Abraham, which we've talked before about. We talked a lot about it with Megan in her interview. It was one of the things that caused her some problems with the origins of the Book of Abraham. There were just a lot of issues. The Book of Abraham has a lot of doctrine based on certain views of cosmology and physics. Things like, God lives on this planet called Kolob, and Kolob is also the source of light for the sun in our solar system. Things that are factually incorrect, things that we know are not true. So there's just a lot of pseudoscience, a lot of woo kind of stuff that comes out of the Book of Abraham. And this song kind of takes all of that and puts it together in a nice, neat little package. It's actually kind of a catchy tune. It's kind of fun to sing. So if you could hie to Kolob, that means if you could go there, travel there. It's talking about space travel, which is just kind of fun. So we're going to read the first couple verses. I'll read the first one. You want to read the second? And I'll read the third? Okay. So, first verse. If you could hie to Kolob in the twinkling of an eye, and then continue onward with that same speed to fly, do you think that you could ever, through all eternity, find out the generation where gods began to be?
Or see the grand beginning where space did not extend, or view the last creation where gods and matter end? Methinks the spirit whispers, no man has found pure space, nor seen the outside curtains where nothing has a place.
The works of God continue, and worlds and lives abound, improvement and progression have one eternal round. There is no end to matter, there is no end to space, there is no end to spirit, there is no end to race. And then the last couple verses are just a continuation of that last bit in the third verse that is like, there is no end to virtue, there is no end to might, and it's just like this list of just attributes, and yeah, just tons of different things.
Into eternity.
Yeah, it just kind of makes the song sound like it's never going to end.
Seriously. This song is very rarely sung in sacrament, in my experience.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. I hardly remember ever singing this song.
Well, I think my ward liked to sing this song. It was, I don't know. I think that a lot of people thought that it was deep and contemplative, and it had like this weird sort of insight, sort of like how people go to the temple and they feel like they've gotten some grand insight into something, but all they've really done is sat and watched a movie about a creation story,
Right.
and then sat in a room quietly and thought to themselves, like there's just not a whole lot that's actually there. They're just kind of reading into it. So as I said, this book is about the book of Abraham, and this song is about the book of Abraham, and the idea that God lives on a planet called Kolob. There are other laughable bits of 19th century cosmology which contradict our current understanding of physics, not to mention the origins of the book of Abraham, which is riddled with problems. I wanted this song to have a more modern feel, almost machine-like, because the book of Abraham reflects the modern, quote-unquote, scientific understanding of Joseph Smith's day, specifically a static universe rather than an expanding universe. It is synthetic and rigid, as reflected by the arpeggiated organs and piano parts. The up-tempo simulates flying through space, as the title and lyrics suggest one can fly to the planet where God lives. Anything to add?
Oh, I'm sure we could talk in depth about this song, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm not prepared to do that right now, so I won't.
Okay. So here is my version of If You Could Hie to Kolob. Okay, so the last song that we have for you is As Zion's Youth in Latter Days. This is also in the hymnal. It is number 256. The lyrics go as follows. As Zion's youth in latter days, we stand with valiant heart, with promise shining in our eyes, resolved to do our part. Upon a noble past we build, the future fills our view. We face the challenge of our day and pledge we will be true. You want to read the second verse?
The truths and values we embrace are mocked on every hand, yet as we listen and obey, we know we can withstand the evils that would weaken us, the sin that would destroy. And faith we hold the iron rod. With faith we hold the iron rod and find in this our joy.
Through test and trial we'll have our fears, but we will not despair. We're here to serve a righteous cause. Truth gives us strength to dare. We'll love and learn and overcome. We'll sing a joyful song as Zion's youth in latter days, triumphant, pure, and strong. So this is an anthem for teenagers to commit to the church forever, despite mockery and urges to sin. It also feeds into the idea that Mormons are extra special, and God saved them until this generation so they could defeat Satan. This is common at youth conferences and EFY, etc., and breeds a mindless obedience and feigned happiness, hence the Disney parade theme. And before we play that song, we'll just do our little outro. So this is the end of our show.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Remember, you can email us at circlesquaredpodcast@gmail.com. You can also leave a review or check out the show's blog at www.circlesquaredpodcast.blogspot.com. And we will see you next time on the Circle Squared Podcast.
Bye.
And here is As Zion Youth in Latter Days.
Disney style.
Disney style.